Good evening, everybody. Lovely to see everybody this evening. So, my talk is entitled Reflections on Friendship. It morphed from the koan of spiritual friendship. Whoops, these are reading glasses, so I can't see you at all if I look through those. So I'm going to have to look over them at you, I'm afraid, in a rather school mistressly sort of way. So reflections on friendship. So in preparing this talk, I've been inspired by a really lovely small anthology of prose and verse on the theme of friendship. And this is it here. It's a very beautiful little book, Reflections on Friendship. And it was compiled by Vijayadevi and Suvajra, I don't know, maybe about 15 years ago or something. It's quite a while ago now. And as you see, I've taken in the end the title of the talk from the little book. It's just a lovely book. It's full of quotations from Buddhists and non-Buddhists, people throughout history, great thinkers, just a few words about their attitude or their reflections on friendship, which has obviously been, since time immemorial, I suppose, just a very deep concern and love and challenge for human beings. So in her introduction to the book, Vijayadevi says, "Friendship is that most precious thing, a free gift." And quoting Cicero, a Roman author, "The greatest gift bestowed on us, with a single exception of wisdom." So that's a strong thing to say, isn't it? And rather beautiful quotation. I think Cicero's written a whole tract on friendship. I haven't read the whole thing, but there's a few quotes in here from Cicero. So I like the idea of friendship being a gift, something that we receive that just appears, almost as though it sort of just descends on us. It does seem to have an intangible quality about it. We can't just sort of make a friendship happen, can we? It just arises if the conditions are right in our lives. It arises between us, and we become sort of conscious of that, and we acknowledge it. And then, then it begins to have a life of its own. It becomes a friendship. So Vijayadevi says, it's a rather lovely little introduction actually, very short but to the point. She says, "Friendship is both mysterious in its arising and elusive of definition," which sort of contrasts with another feeling I have, that it's quite a straightforward thing, quite a down-to-earth thing. And she quotes Ralph Waldo Emerson in the little book as well, who talks of friendship as the solidest thing we know. So it's something that can be very, very dependable. He says, "I do not wish to treat friendships daintily, but with roughest courage. When they are real, they are not glass threads or frostwork, but the solidest thing we know." So there is something of the nature of a koan or a paradox, isn't there? But I didn't want the talk to sort of have to go down that sort of what is a paradox, what is a koan thing. I thought it didn't develop like that. I was beginning to tie myself in knots with the paradoxes actually. But there is a paradox also at the heart of friendship in the spiritual life, which I'll briefly touch on, because it's famously reported that the Buddha, on the one hand, said to his friend and attendant Ananda that friendship could be seen as the whole of the spiritual life. And I take that as meaning, I think it's something that can have a variety of meanings actually, but I take it as meaning that friendship should flow through and maybe be the context for the whole of our spiritual lives. Not that we should be with each other the whole time, but that this sort of flavour of spiritual friendship, spiritual comradeship, would be one that we're sort of swimming in, that we're part of, we partake in. But the Buddha also said that we should be islands unto ourselves, and most of the time he's in the Pali Canon, you see him encouraging people to go off on their own to meditate and seek wisdom, to strive individually. And the two things do seem to be a little bit at odds. So what does it mean that we should be islands unto ourselves, yet give of ourselves in friendship to our spiritual companions as the whole of our spiritual life? So I think perhaps that's something in a way those are two tendencies that we do all meet in our spiritual lives. And perhaps we can only really resolve that as individuals in our actual lives. It's not maybe something you can really think through. Can I just check whether you can all hear me at the back? Okay. Bit louder. Okay, I'll try. Yes. Yes, so we're all different, as we've probably noticed. And I think in relation to friendship and communication, there'll be very big differences between introverts and extroverts. But at the same time, I think we all probably have those twin pools that we at times, probably all of us at some point in the time, just have a longing to be on our own. We just want the world to go away, and we want to sort of just be able to contact ourselves, go deeply within ourselves. But we, at the same time, we probably all of us at some point, maybe more, more sometimes than others, have a need or a deep wish to share ourselves with others. We want somebody else to be there so that we can actually express and maybe understand more deeply through expressing who we are, what's going on, what's just happened. So those two, I think those two pools are with us. And as with the Dharma, we're often asked to respond to everything, aren't we? Both pools at once. So I think that's the case here, that we need to sort of find our own middle way between those two pools. And that middle way will be probably the ability to be more and more of an individual wherever we find ourselves, whether we're on our own or whether we're with people, to try and be authentic and ourselves really, more and more when we're with other people, and the same person as we are on our own. Sort of see if we can, I suppose a practical quest would be to see if we can find the depth that we experience on our own with other people, while the depth of presence in ourselves, the contact with ourselves, the same as much as we can. And that might just be a practice that we could take on to sort of see, can I experience that depth? How would I experience that depth with somebody else? I found in my sort of trawlings through various, this was I think from an internet site, I just put in paradox, I think, and I came up with this quote from Bodhipakcha, who's the author of Wild Mind, and it's from his blog. And he says, I always think it's very significant that it was in the very act of communicating with others that I came into a more intimate contact with myself. So I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that, but I think that was in a way that sort of bridges those two pools, doesn't it? It's the kawan resolved. And yes, the Dharma tells us something here which has also been accented very much by Sangharakshita, by Bhante Sangharakshita, our teacher, which is that friendship can be a path itself to help us deepen our individuality. So friendship does, I think, being with a friend helps us to get to know ourselves, helps bridge that gap, helps us stand in that middle ground between self and other. But yes, so that's by way of introduction to the sort of part of the theme of friendship. It's such an enormous theme. I started off writing one talk and I've written another, and I think there's several talks here. So I've tried not to write all of them at once, which is my tendency. But so I thought I'd now cut into a more personal aspect and talk a little bit about my own sort of journey in relation to friendship, my own slightly tortuous journey, as it has been. And to say that I'm not giving this talk as an authority on friendship. In a way, I think probably there might be people here I'm sure there are people here who've got much deeper realization of friendship, and understanding of friendship, and experience of friendship. And also there'll be great differences in that for each of us. So if I come across sort of like I know it all, or I'm a bit patronizing, whatever, just take that with a pinch of salt, because I'm just saying a few thoughts and reflections of my own experience. And I think it's something that's hard to know the essence of friendship, isn't it? It's hard to really know what you're talking about. It's a little bit intangible, as Vijay Devi said at the beginning. So I'm just sort of trying to cast a few straws in a few directions. So yeah, I particularly don't feel an authority on friendship because I'm not someone who's had lifelong experience of friendship. So I feel rather like the status of a convert in relation to friendship. I could say I only really experienced acquaintanceships really until my late 20s, I would say. So I spent a long portion of my time without friends, without close friends, and without anyone I was really sharing myself with at any depth at all. I don't think I really understood the concept of really being able to share myself at all with anybody and really be heard for me. There was always a very cut-off point quite close to the surface, really, which was a painful experience. But it was like I couldn't get through that. I didn't quite know how to get through that. So when I would think of friendship, it would be quite a painful thing to think about, and I would have that sense of isolation. I know now that isn't a totally unusual thing, but at the time I felt I could see everybody with their friends, and that everybody had friendships, and I was one of the very few rather weird ones who didn't quite know how to do it, which of course made it all the worse and made me all the more self-conscious about it, and sort of awkward around people, thinking, I wonder if that person might be interested in being my friend, and actually I don't think I want to be their friend anyway. things like that can get very, very complicated. And once, quite soon after I was ordained, and by that time I did have some quite good friends, it was actually only a few months after I was ordained, I was sort of landed in leading this retreat at Taraloka, which I wouldn't have really chosen to do. And it was on the theme of friendship, which I thought, oh, well, that sounds like a lovely theme. But no, I thought it would be a lovely, sort of heartwarming, sort of lovely, inspiring week. It was the Christmas week as well, which is probably mad to have a Christmas week with people who probably, don't want to be at home at Christmas. Anyway, which was probably me as well. It turned out to be one of the most difficult retreats I've ever led, and it felt sort of rather flat and joyless and very challenging. I just wasn't really up to bring the elephant out from under the carpet, I just didn't want to say, well, actually, friendship can be really painful, can't it? But obviously that was what people were thinking, I suspect. So yes, so that was something I sort of tried to not think about too much, that particular retreat. But it did really bring home to me the importance of friendship and the fact that it isn't that easy a thing in many of our lives in the West, probably. It's sort of easy once it arises somehow. There's an ease in friendship, but then when you haven't got friendship, it can seem completely intangible and elusive, I think. It can be a very emotional topic. I've just got a couple of quotes from people about the importance of friendship in our lives. C.S. Lewis says friendship is one of the things that gives value to survival. So that's quite strong, isn't it? I mean, survival, probably, I suppose for us it's the ultimate value, isn't it? But friendship gives value to survival. And Banti himself, speaking of communication within friendship, he says, the making of oneself known to another human being, being known by them, and knowing that you are known by them is essential to human health and happiness. Yeah. Essential to human health and happiness. Yeah, I think I was unhappy and unhealthy actually when I was not able to do that, and yes, you begin to feel sort of bad about yourself as well, I think, if you're not able to share yourself, and a bit like there's something wrong with you, and that you probably shouldn't be sharing yourself, or you couldn't share yourself. It does get very complicated. So yes, so it was for me. I was fortunate, really, coming to Triratna at the age of 25, then called the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, with its emphasis on friendship and communication. And then my sense of isolation did gradually change. The conditions were very helpful, but even then I was really shy and timid and unconfident. So yeah, at the same time as I had those I held myself back, but at the same time as needing friendship, wanting friendship so much it made it actually impossible to do anything about it. It got very awkward. After a while, I think I was 28, I started working in a team-based right livelihood Buddhist business around the West London Centre where I was based, a whole food shop with other women, a women's team, and that was just a really joyful time. It was just, in a way, I suppose it gave me the conditions for something more natural to happen, just being around those women all the time. I think I started doing it because I'd been on retreat quite a bit. I really loved retreats. And I thought, well, actually being with other Buddhists all the time, that's going to feel a bit like a retreat. And it did feel more like play than work. It was to start with. But after a while, it felt like work. It felt like work, but I was working with people who, initially I felt like, I could really be myself with those people. But then there did come to this sort of ceiling where things did need to become a bit more conscious, actually. So the thing that really helped me next was something called communication exercises, which I don't know if we actually do them anymore in Triratna. I haven't really heard anyone sort of say, but for people like me who actually hated communication exercises, but that was what I really needed, and they involved sitting opposite somebody and actually looking at them with unflinchingly, if you could, and initially maybe just sort of sitting looking for, maybe it was 5 minutes, I can't remember, it's 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and then you would actually move into another section where you said a sentence, and you said the cow is in the field, and the other person would say yes, and then you'd say the same again, and it would be very funny, but also I suppose it was a context just to sort of look at somebody else, which I'd never really done. I'd hardly ever done. I would sort of avoid that if at all possible. In fact, that was one of the striking experiences for me of coming into the movement on my first beginner's course. Having somebody, a woman who's supporting the class, came up to me and asked me a question, and then she looked at me when I answered her and listened to me, and it was like a unique experience. I don't think I'd ever really felt so heard and looked at, and I thought, oh gosh, better watch what I say. She's listening to me. It's a bit like I hadn't really expected to be taken seriously and heard, and I had someone's attention focused right on me, whereas I guess all of us were just multitasking, really, sort of doing several things at once. So it's very strong. I think it's a very strong gift, actually, just to be present with somebody and just to sort of take them in and hear them. That may not have happened to them before. If you support a class or anything, or just on the street or anywhere, I think we know it's an amazing gift just to be present with somebody. I suppose it's treating somebody as a human being, isn't it? So yes, so there I was, and I was sitting opposite Annie, one of my team members, doing these exercises and looking into her eyes, and sort of the first time I sort of saw her and saw that she was seeing me, and it sort of got beyond the sort of nervousness and sort of settled a bit, and I just saw warmth and kindness there and acceptance. And something in me just sort of relaxed. And there was sort of something that happened between us, I don't know what it was, and I felt at the end of that I like this person, and I'd like to become their friend, and it felt like almost that was the beginning of a friendship, because we'd actually, I don't know, something had, we'd acknowledged each other somehow as human beings. And that did go on to be a friendship, and actually Kalyan Vacha is one of my oldest, she probably is my oldest, strongest friend. And these days, we've lived at Taraloka a bit together, we've lived at different places, but now we've kept the friendship going by meeting on order weekends every Saturday evening on an order weekend. When we're both there, we have dinner together and a walk after dinner. And that's just our standing arrangement. And it works, it sort of keeps us in contact with each other. So one of the points I wanted to make here was, in a way, it wasn't very intentional, that. I didn't really choose Annie, now called Kalyan Vacha, and she wasn't to me, in a way, she wasn't anyone really special. I wasn't thinking, gosh, I'd be great to make a friendship with Kalyan Vacha. But as we became friends and I got to know her, she became very special. I think it was in getting to know her that the specialness emerged, and she became very dear to me, and I could see her great qualities. In a way, I think she is special, but I don't think she's uniquely special. I think that's something about friendship, that when we are with somebody like that, the person does become special. There's a sort of a glow about just any person is very special. We're all special in that way. The other point I wanted to make, well, I was quite ordinary too. I was ordinary as well, although I thought I was really special and also hated myself at the same time, as we often do. Which was one of my little problems. But looking back in hindsight, and now as well, really, I can see that I was quite ordinary. And in meeting Annie as a person, I was able to be ordinary with Annie. And that was a great relief. We were just human beings together in that communication. And so that's paradoxically very special, to sort of just feel, I can just be, I can just be me. I don't have to be anything in particular. I can just be me. So I suppose I was saying that maybe that none of you have any difficulties at all in friendships, and as I keep thinking, everyone else has got it made with friendships. You may think maybe you're not much of a catch as a friend, we haven't got much to give, we haven't got many special qualities, but that's not true for any of us. And in a sense, it's nothing to do, our qualities are nothing to do with the capacity or even the wish or the nature of friendship, because we're all human beings, we all have the quality of aliveness and I don't know, individuality. We are very special. So, although it does sound cliched, I do have to say, I think it's true that we can all have confidence that we have something to give, and that is ourselves, just being who we are. Being ourselves is enough, but actually it's incredibly difficult, isn't it, to be ourselves? So we can only try to be ourselves. Being authentic is a whole path. I guess the Buddha was authentic, and the more authentic we can be, perhaps the closer we are to the Buddha. So it's about a bit of a koan too, isn't it, actually, when you think about it. It's sort of easy but difficult, isn't it? Sounds easy. We just need to be ourselves. So I think it's to do with just feeling that we can be ourselves, we can be honest, and we can be authentic and be open about our faults and our successes, and that's, in a way, that's the whole basis of a friendship, is that authenticity and openness. A little quote here, also from the little book, from William Hazlitt. I can't remember who William Hazlitt was. He sounds as though I should know who he is. I'm not even sure when he was from. Does anybody know William Hazlitt? Any literary persona here? No. Sounds familiar, doesn't he? Anyway, what he said was, "It is well that there is no one without a fault, for he or she would not have a friend in the world. He or she would seem to belong to a different species." So we're not going to be perfect, and our friends won't be perfect either. So in a way, there's a moral not to be going out seeking the perfect friend. So there's a couple of very sort of little aphorisms of Bante's that have really helped me in relation to developing friendships or understanding what friendship is. And the first one I thought I'd share with you now. He says that friendship begins when we treat persons as persons. We treat people as people. When we see the person for who they are, a living, breathing person just like us. So the context in which he goes into all this is, in his talk, A Case of Dysentery. And here he's reflecting on a story from the Pali Canon, where the Buddha and Ananda is the Buddha's attendant, and they're sort of going the rounds, visiting the monks in their huts. And he finds, eventually they come to one hut which is sort of empty, and they walk in and they find the monk there is quite old and he's very, very ill. He's suffering from dysentery and he's actually lying in his own excrement and very, very weak. He can hardly move. He's in really, really quiet state. So the Buddha asks the monk, what is anybody looking after you? Because he just doesn't seem to be cared for at all. And the monk says, no, nobody is looking after me. So the Buddha says, well, why not? Why aren't the monks coming to look after you? And he says, it's because I'm not of any use to them, which is a very, very, really sort of shocking thing. And they were very honest to say that. Maybe that cuts a long story short, but that's what they say. That's what he says, that he's not of any use. He's old, he's ill, and they've just left him to it. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I sort of thought the monks at the time of the Buddha might be different. They might be sort of more evolved or something, or have gone beyond that sort of ego thing or not caring, but apparently not. So I guess it's a very human thing, and and we can probably relate a little bit in our own way to that sort of story. There are times when we don't care for people, when we don't respond, and we're not able to do more than sort of quite a limited amount for somebody else. Because, it's very hard to go beyond that self-centeredness and that ego, isn't it? Bhante calls that it's a utilitarian attitude to people. That can be part of that we sort of like people, or we help people because they can be useful, or we want to be friends with somebody because they're useful to us. So we like them as long as they're valuable. So treating people like things, like commodities or useful if they're useful, is not treating a person as a person. in a way, probably when we do that, we're not treating ourselves as a person either, are we? Is that utilitarian attitude as well? We want to do something, we want to get something. It's coming from a particular side of us that isn't very human, isn't fully human. So that's when we're friends only in good times rather than in the bad times, when there's something in it for us. Yeah, which again, we're going to be doing that over and over again probably, so we just need to own it and confess it when it occurs. But Bhante suggests that treating somebody in a purely utilitarian way is actually unethical, which is something to think about. I think in lots of little ways we do relate to people in a utilitarian way. And also there's a Greek philosopher called Aristotle. He did a big treatise on friendship as well, and he called this level of the utilitarian level the first level of friendship. And it was sort of accepted that, in a way, it's not a deep level of friendship, but that we do actually, when we hang out with people, maybe we meet them through maybe a business meeting or something, there is a level of companionship that is better than no level, and it gets us to be together. Maybe we go out to a concert with somebody, we regularly give somebody a lift, they receive a lift, that sort of thing. That can be the beginning of something else. It needn't stay on that utilitarian level. But even then, when there is utility there, we can sort of try and cut through that, can't we, by actually noticing the person and saying thank you and asking how they are, and not just sort of taking them for granted on that level. So to end the story, the Buddha and Ananda, they just set to, and the Buddha sends Ananda for water. He comes back, and they actually just start washing the monk and looking after the monk and making him comfortable. And then they don't just leave it to the monks even to take responsibility. They do that themselves, and then they go off. So yeah, I think it's just quite a moving story of the Buddha's care for his monks. So I thought we could think about that in our own lives. Do we find ourselves treating people in a particular way because of their function? Well, I'm sure we do. I think we all probably, I do. We sort of respond to people. We can be a bit half there, can't we? Sometimes when we're in a utilitarian relationship with somebody. But I thought also at the Buddhist Centre we could maybe work harder to see the human being behind the label of Mitra or GFR Mitra or Order Member. They're a human being behind the caser. Behind whatever it is that's there. And we can treat ourselves as a utilitarian way by getting caught up in our own roles. And, well, I'm a Mitra, I'm an Order Member. What does that really mean? So there's a human being behind that role, behind the person making the tea or putting out the shrine room cushions or giving the talk, whatever it is. So another aphorism of Bhante's that I found really practically helpful, and that was when I was working at the Right Livelihood business. It almost became a bit of a mantra because I just repeated it to myself, I think. He said, if you want to have a friend, be a friend. If you want to have a friend, be a friend. And I don't remember where I heard him say that. It must have been a talk, some sort of talk. But it had a very strong impression on me. I thought, here's something I can do. I can do this. Because I was stuck in this sort of confusion of not knowing. Friendship seemed so elusive and intangible. I had no idea what to do. And here was something I could do, something quite practical. So I thought, well, how can I be a friend to Annie? Because we made that original sort of connection, but I wasn't sure what to do next. How to sort of develop that. And I think one of the things about this quotation, if you want to have a friend, be a friend, it took the emphasis away from me and what I needed. And it sort of put it towards her and what can I give or what does she need, and which is in a way part of the whole substance of friendship. This is to sort of get out of our own sort of ego-centered place. Yeah. So I started being curious and trying to think more about the other person than about me, which, as I was so self-conscious, was very sort of helpful and shy. So these were my potential friends. How could I be a friend to them? What did Annie like? What did she need? How was Annie? So instead of thinking, how do I feel going to talk to Annie, I would say, well, I wonder how Annie is. So it was put the whole accent of it in a different sort of way. I was talking to Vanessa, my partner, last night about this area, and she said, well, yes, it's all to do with being interested, not interesting. So that was a good little quote, being interested in them, not trying to be an interesting person so that people would like me. So that's, anyway, it's another one, isn't it? Being interested, not interesting. Because I suppose we try to be likable and interesting and, sort of come out with great little wise sayings and helpful, sort of useful, I suppose. We're trying to be useful, aren't we? But in a way, that's not what the other person really wants. They probably really don't want that, actually. I think you should do this, that sort of thing. People, in a way, want us to be interested in them, don't they? And to be curious and to take an interest and listen to them and perhaps not say anything. I know, yeah, I do get that feedback from time to time. So we can get really caught up in our habits in relation to relationship, and so I think there can be quite a strong habit or very, very deep sense in there that, well, no one's going to want me to be a friend, people won't like me, which can all get very heavy and a bit sort of solemn. So this thing of just sort of cuts through it, just being aware of the other person. And in relation to breaking habits, there's Pema Chodron, who's from the Tibetan tradition. She advises lightening up about it all, just sort of lightening up. And she says, we just need to get out of our own way and be curious about other people, just lighten up, and sort of let go of the sort of problem orientation. And so it does help to have something to do, which actually reminds me of, I've talked here before about my friendship with Vijayamala in her leaving ceremony. I think I reminisced a bit about our friendship, but we'd had a very deliberate sort of friendship where I earmarked her as the person I would get to know at Triratna. Well, we did that with everybody because we didn't want people to be lonely. And when she moved to Triratna, and so I took on to see her every week. And after a little while, we used to go for a walk every week, and it just got rather boring. We didn't know what to say to each other. And after a while, it took quite a while, we admitted that, I'm not sure who said it first, probably Vijayamala did, but Prue as she was then, and we admitted that we were bored. We didn't know what to do, really. And then she said, why don't we grow something? And so we started growing. We got these seeds, and we put them out on the kitchen table. We got sort of trays of earth and started growing pinks and campanulas, I think, in particular. And they sort of grew in an enormous number of pinks and campanulas. So then we had to sort of pot them on, as you can imagine. And it just we just ended up doing these things together. And then we put them in the retreat centre garden. And then we watched them grow, and we were very pleased with them. They were gorgeous. And somehow it took the awkwardness out of this every week thing. I think it just turned a corner. We began to enjoy hanging out, and we stopped being so sort of deliberate and trying to be spiritual, and just sort of had fun together. So I think that's another really important thing, isn't it? That spiritual friendship is friendship. It's friendship, isn't it? It's not any different, really. And we're just people who want to have fun, aren't we? We want to just sort of bring all the aspects of ourselves in there and not just the spiritual bits. And Triratna got some lovely flowers into the bargain. So you can't, perhaps it doesn't really work to try too hard with friendships. And I think sort of coming out of all of that, there's the quality of kindness, I think. And I just very moved as though a little section in here by Samuel Johnson, who's someone Bhante often he often quotes, somebody he's obviously really likes. Didn't he do the dictionary? Was it Samuel Johnson who came up with the first dictionary? So I thought Bhante loves dictionaries. Anyway, this particular quote, you wouldn't think he was a dictionary writer. I've got a projection on dictionary writers, obviously. Okay. We cannot tell the precise moment when friendship is formed. As in filling a vessel drop by drop, there is at last a drop that makes it run over. So in a series of kindnesses, there is at last one which makes the heart run over. So that's rather lovely, isn't it? We cannot tell the precise moment when friendship is formed. As in filling a vessel drop by drop, there is at last a drop that makes it run over. So in a series of kindnesses, there is at last one which makes the heart run over. Yeah, so it can be as simple as that, sort of just befriending somebody with kindness. And letting that, I suppose also it's receiving, isn't it? The whole other aspect of friendship is receiving friendship and receiving kindness, and not being so self-sufficient that we can't let the person also give to us. Yeah. So I think kindness does open the heart, and it leads the way to trust and to love, which are in a way the very essence of friendship. I don't know how I'm doing for time. I forgot to. No, okay, yeah. I've got a lovely little anonymous Chinese poem, which I like. It's called Being Visited by a Friend During Illness. I have been ill so long, I do not count the days. At the southern window, evening, and again, evening. Sadly chirping in the grasses under my eaves, the winter sparrows morning and evening sing. By an effort I rise and lean heavily on my bed. Tottering I step towards the door of the courtyard. By chance I meet a friend who is coming to see me, just as if I'd gone specially to meet him. They took my couch and placed it in the setting sun. They spread my rug and I leaned on the balcony pillar. Tranquil talk was better than any medicine. Gradually the feelings came back to my numbed heart. Yeah. So sort of just the opening of the heart is very, very beautiful. Yeah, so the opening of the heart. So friendship is, in essence, is to do with the heart. And that's not something we can organise or legislate for, saying I ought to be your friend, she ought to be my friend. We can't make friendship happen. It's a mysterious, I think it is mysterious. So this last section of the talk is just sort of voyaging into the area of friendship in Triratna, in us and friendship, which is an interesting area, and I'm just sort of saying a few things about it, and there's so many more things one could say. I think it's a bit of a truly paradoxical area in Triratna, and it can be quite a painful area to do with friendship, and also a very lovely area. As I say, and as we know, our teacher Bhante he's valued friendship very highly. He's had strong friendships in his life. It's been something he's given, I think. It's something he's shared, and he sparked off in others, his feeling for friendship. I know his teacher, Dada Rinpoche, his Tibetan, maybe his closest Tibetan teacher, said at one time that was something that Bhante had given to him, that it was his sort of, it gave him a sense of what friendship could be, was his friendship with Sangharakshita. So Bhante's encouraged us sort of to spark that off for us and for Triratna. And spiritual friendship is one of what's known as the 6 emphases of Triratna, or that is one of the 6 aspects or practices that give Triratna its particular spiritual flavour. I won't say what the other 5 are right now because I can't remember. I'm sure I've got them written down somewhere. We should be able to tell, shouldn't we, just by how we feel, what these emphases are. So within Triratna, we've created structures to encourage the development of friendship, spiritual friendships, just friendship really. And we encourage, you could say really that I think we do encourage friendship in a way that other Buddhist movements don't always seem to. And apparently that's especially the aspect of peer friendship, which can even be frowned upon in some groups, or has been. I'm not sure if that's still the case, whether that's still the case. Because I think some groups really do relate only to teacher-disciple relationship. But Bhante Sangharakshita, he encourages us to have a balance of both what he calls horizontal, or these peer friendships, and vertical friendships. And the vertical ones, what they really mean are relationships with somebody more experienced and also with somebody less experienced. So it's the whole sort of vertical strata. It's not just our relationship with somebody more experienced, but also our befriending somebody less experienced. So you can see you've got this whole rather big mandala of friendships, potentially a large number of friendships within relationships with peers, relationships on that vertical axis. Yeah, I was thinking it created a sort of waterfall of relationship. I thought it was rather nice. Because we are befriended by somebody with more experience, and then we can actually befriend others with a bit less experience. Although we have to bear in mind that that isn't a static thing. You can't really always say at any one point whether somebody has got more experience or more wisdom maybe than you have, or that you have more than they have. It's really, we have to be in the present with who we are at that point and with who that person is at that point, and that what the context is, I think, and not get stuck in hierarchies and fixed hierarchies. Just be open to what's there. We could have a Buddha walk through the door, or close to Buddha walk through the door for the next beginners class, and maybe we have done and turned them away. So we need to not get caught up in roles and think that just because someone's got a case on, it means they've got much more wisdom. They certainly aren't any better at accounting or anything, but then whether they've got any more wisdom in any area. Probably having the case is a sign of that somebody is actually trying to develop and trying to grow, and they've made that commitment to do that, but it may not mean that they've got a particular set level of awareness or wisdom. There's something about that little story that a group of some of Bante's Tibetan teachers, who are very senior Tibetan gurus, apparently were all chatting together one day, and somebody asked them who was the most advanced amongst them, and they apparently all giggled, and sometimes see Tibetans do, giggled, and then one of them replied that actually one of them was much more advanced than the others, but none of us would ever know who that was. So that was good. So you can't judge by appearances, obviously, they say it takes one to know one, doesn't it? It takes an enlightened person to know another enlightened person. So that being the sort of the basis, the sort of peer friendships and the vertical friendships, and us trying to sort of do all of it, we can get in a bit of a mess, can't we, with too many people in our lives. I don't know if anybody here experiences that ever. No, I don't think so. We can get a bit sort of, or even busy with people. I've certainly suffered from that. Sometimes I think introverts have it the worst because they don't really want too many people in a way. But I think Buddhists do become friendly introverts, and so we have a go at it. So we sort of imagine we have to be friends with everybody, and we may end up not being friends with anybody at all because it becomes so superficial. So I think in the end we need to bear that in mind, that what are we capable of, and also just reflect on the importance of allowing ourselves some deeper friendships, maybe to let go of the numbers and give ourselves a bit of time so that we can actually have the satisfying depths with some deeper friendships. Letting some friendships go deeper. I guess that we might not know which ones would go deeper. It might not be with people we think we really want to go deeper with, but it might be with the people who are available, as it were, to go deeper with. So I think a friendship does take time to develop, and a clarity between us that is what we want to do. There's another little quote I had from Wordsworth, name dropping with all these great poets. So Wordsworth, this is from the little book as well, he said, "I'm already kindly disposed towards you. My friendship, though, is not in my power to give. This is a gift which no man can make. It is not in our own power. A sound and healthy friendship is the growth of time and circumstance. It will spring up and thrive like a wild flower when these favour, and when they do not, it is vain to look for it." Very practical. So we need time and circumstance for friendship to have the soil to grow in and to spring up like a wildflower. We need to actually spend time with people. So I think the people we're going to befriend are the people we spend time with, and they're going to be our most valuable friends. The people we actually do hang out with, and the people like Annie, who I was just hanging out with, and well, she was very special. People become very special through friendship, don't they? I think there's a bit, and also another confusion for us too, because we're practicing the metta bhavana. We go on retreats and we do these intensive workshops with communication. We sort of get to know. Sometimes we will drop into a deep space with someone, don't we? And then maybe we just don't see them again, or we see them next week and we sort of think, I had that really deep communication with that person, and I wonder if they're my friend now or what. And but actually, it's that depth of communication isn't the same as friendship. It's friendly. There's friendliness, but it takes that continuity over time and space for a friendship to really manifest as a friendship. Sort of deep communication is a wonderful thing, but it's not really a friendship as such. I mean, it's a type of friendship, but it's friendly. Yeah, it's not friendship in the sense of a deep, nourishing, long-term friendship, of which maybe we can only have. I think Bhante says maybe 3 or 4 in our lives, maybe at only one time, to actually be able to sustain a deep friendship. We have to sort of just have a few. But I think it can be confusing that we do, and it's wonderful really that we do have these deeper connections with people, that we really do share ourselves in the way that perhaps we'd never do it in the world outside, except with a really close friend. But actually we do that here as Buddhists maybe quite often. And it is very special, and it needs to be treasured and looked after, I think, and and really appreciated, and differentiated from a sort of friendship in a way. Yeah. So, I think the Buddha himself, apparently he had a few deeper friends. I mean, it's not really written about a lot, but there is a story towards the end of the Buddha's life where his 2 chief disciples die, Sariputra and Moggallana. They die within quite a short space of each other. And it's a very moving little passage, and the Buddha says he feels that the assembly of the Sangha now feels empty. It's as though a great limb has fallen off a tree, the tree of the Sangha. It's just very, very beautiful and very moving, I think, just to think of the Buddha. He felt that loss. He was no doubt aware of the fact that they would die, and he accepted their death. But he also had a heart, and he felt the loss of those people. Yes, I think I've said all that. So I think I'm just coming to the end. I have a few conclusions to make at the end of this, and I thought I'd just draw a few points from what I've already said to conclude. So one would be just to emphasise, I think that just for us to really value the long and deep friendships that we have that have stood the test of time, and to not and to cherish them, nourish them and cherish them is one. Another one, value the friendships that are arising between our peers, between the people we get to spend a lot of time with, and make the most of them, and maybe even make more of those friendships, because I know for myself and a lot of my friends, we were all peers as we grew up through our practice in this movement. We were peers, and I think it's with your peers that you have the most time together. You've got the most opportunity to develop your friendships, and so really value those peer friendships and take them as far as you can. And lastly, go for depth as well as breadth. So try to bear in mind what that ratio is for you. I think some people are capable of getting to know more people and having some depth, and others maybe need to get to know less people to have that sort of same depth. And then bringing those aphorisms back. If you want to have a friend, be a friend. So we can think, how will I do that? If you want to have a friend, be a friend. That friendships begin when we treat a person as a person and not as a thing or a resource. So we might be surprised to find ourselves doing that, so we might just think about that. To what extent do we treat people as resources? And which is, perhaps it's just a natural thing that human beings do, but I think to be aware of it would be useful. And perhaps we can inject a little bit of humanity in there as well. Ask them how they are before we get them to do something. Joke. Maybe sort of get a bigger picture there somehow. And lastly, to emphasise that friendship isn't something that can be forced or organised or legislated for or structured, even in Triratna, unfortunately. It just arises in a mysterious, elusive way according to circumstance. And I'll end with the words of Samuel Johnson. We cannot tell the precise moment when friendship is formed. As in filling a vessel drop by drop, there is at last a drop which makes it run over. So in a series of kindnesses, there is at last one which makes the heart run over. Thank you.